with this kind of problem, for example, patients in the United States will be suffering less hurdles to get their diagnostics like from one day to the other than the European patients. Is that a fair assumption?
The big thing about cardiac MRI, besides obviously leveraging the value on an MRI, which is a tissue characterization, it's a moving organ, it's a moving target. So I think in the future, it's not today, but it will certainly be mandatory. You would not be able to have a practice.
That's interesting. This is
without
an interesting aspect.
Your algorithm is going to be as good as the data that you trained it on.
Whichever tool is going to use AI, it needs to go through a committee.
And
before
who's on
getting...
that committee? That's another question.
Yeah,
right?
so you see, this is the complexity.
You can use deep learning techniques to simulate or even sometimes in a superhuman fashion, do all of those contours on the sequences.
We're talking about deep learning and computer vision and all of these different algorithms. What is the actual impact on the day-to-day workflow for a cardiac MRI radiographer?
Even as humans, if you're looking at, you can look at an image and you can tell that this is Siemens, this is Philips, right?
Yeah.
So there is some differences, even though there's similar physics behind it.
I can picture like potential module like literally AI in healthcare or like as a potential degree.
So as a society, it's senseless if we're not using the best of the time of those highly specialized resources. So that's certainly part of our vision.
What happens when you have one of those reports that are done quite quickly, as you say, 5 times quicker than the usual?
Mm-hmm.
And is there any supervision from the radiologist on it? And if that is, what happens when they don't actually agree with each other?
We've been bombarded, I would say nowadays, by the new frontiers of technology, machine learning, deep learning, AI, and every time we're like, oh my God, there are so many words, so many technologies popping in. But the reality is one of the main domain where these technologies have, I would say, one of their biggest advantage is in medical imaging, MRI specifically, and even more specifically, cardiac MRI.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad to discuss with you here, Daniel, about this, because I think you can tell us a little bit more. You can help us understanding the differences between all these different technologies, the implication that they're going to have in this field, and if there are some drawbacks as well, and what we should expect. There you go.
Sure, Julie. Yeah, happy to. So I'll give you some practical examples because I think that's the best way to go around it. I think AI is obviously a big buzzword and even more nowadays. But AI can certainly unfold on many technologies, from deep learning. Obviously, LLM is the latest boy on the street and certainly the most disruptive. But I can give you some examples. So for instance, I've been on the cardiac MRI space for over 20 years. I started on doing AI before it was...
tell us a little bit more about you, because I'm very interested. I think the audience at home will be quite interested to understand a little bit more your background.
Okay. So I'll pivot to that before. So just a little bit about me, just for context. I started as a radiographer, such as you guys.
I think we studied in the same university, right?
I was the first batch from University of Aveiro.
Yeah, we studied in the same university.
There you go. We just found it out.
So that's funny.
This is the beauty of speaking live.
I was looking at his LinkedIn before we started the podcast, like, okay, let me make sure I know everything I need to know. And I saw University of Aveiro. It's okay, same university. That's a good starting point.
It's a small world. Just your previous guest.
Absolutely.
We're great friends, so it was good bumping into him here. But yeah, I started in Aveiro. I was the first batch. So Aveiro University, for the audience, is a university in Portugal, and it was the first university to actually compound radiography as a course. So I was the first batch to come in. This was in before 2000s. So yeah, I was trained as a radiographer and actually practiced for a number of years, general radiography, and I was fortunate enough, one of our professors, my professors, kind of guided me or shepherded me into cardiac imaging. So I was fortunate to start doing that early in the days. So even before cardiac CT was a thing, I started doing it in 16 slices. Bear in mind, this was 20 plus years ago. Cardiac CT was just in his emergencies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I onboarded. I was leading a radiology department embedded within a cardiology department, which was certainly quite unique in the world at the time, and certainly one of a kind, certainly in Portugal. And I was part of many interesting things as part of interventional cardiac radiology or just cardiology in general. So, for example, I did some of the first TAVI procedures in Europe, certainly way before they were a big thing in the US. I did those in Portugal again. And I was fortunate to do a lot of mistakes, learn a lot, and I was really embedded into the industry. So there was a lot of medical devices, they were going there, getting tested.
Yeah.
And I was part of those clinical trials and so on. So I had a chance to interact with a lot of people in industry. So I soon realized working in a public hospital, even though I was fortunate, wasn't for me. So I really wanted to go into the industry. So I went back to university. I took a computational engineering degree. And later after that, I took my MBA and I moved into industry. So I've done multiple companies over the world. One, perhaps one of the most famous, let's say, was Circle Cardiovascular Imaging, which is certainly the dominant force. So I started in the early days. In the beginning, I built their business for Europe, South America, some of Asia Pacific as well. And then I've been with the company for many, many years. And then over the last couple or 3 years, we had to exit. So we had a big private equity sale. And then I moved on. And I launched my new company as well. So again,
We'll touch
within
upon
the
that.
cardiac within the cardiac space. So yeah, long story short, that's a bit of my my background. So yeah, I'll pause here. I can go back to your earlier question if you want, which was around
Yeah,
AI.
please.
Okay. I don't want to do all the talking. So,
No, that's why you're here. You're the guest. So go ahead.
so guide me. Yeah, within AI, like I said, big buzzword. So obviously that unravels on a number of different techniques. I can give you an example within the company I am now. Can I reference the name?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So AI for CMR. So we're the only cloud native AI solution today in the market in this space. So it's a full cloud native solution. It runs up any browser, and we're an AI company first and foremost. We have over 30 people working in Portugal. That's our R&D development offices, but we also have offices in other parts of the world, namely Switzerland. So we're an AI company, and we're using all of those techniques that you asked, Julian, to basically automate the way that we're doing the workflow. So we're taking the way that the physician is doing things, and we're using AI to mimic and accelerate and make things quicker, but also safer.
Can I go back 1 second to
Please,
one thing?
go ahead.
Before going into that, which I think it will be the core part of the... I think there is a little bit of confusion. People tend to confuse a little bit what it is, deep learning, machine learning, and AI. Can you maybe guide us a little bit? What are the differences between these three big names? And I'm sure there are more, but if you can tell us a little bit more about...
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a great segue because that was what I was referencing. So like I said, we're an AI company first and foremost. We're using those techniques to accelerate the workflow. So I'll give you some examples and that will help you understand the different techniques. So for instance, the first thing we do, we digest all the DICOM images from either the scanner or the PACS or whatever the workflow is configured. And we're doing basically image classification and disease classification. We actually have a number of patents in the US, but also in Europe around this. So that's image classification, right? So it helps us detect the specific sequences that require the right annotation.
So you have an algorithm that reads the DICOM images and identifies the pathologies on your images.
Correct.
In blunt terms, that's what it does. Okay.
That's one aspect, but it's detecting the sequences, and that allows us to do a bunch of things. One of them is certainly that. So for example, and again, this is one of the patents we have, we can identify dysfunction without any human interaction. So we can know before you actually even open the study if that patient has a dysfunction of the left ventricle with a very high degree of specificity. So our negative predictive value is over 99%. Okay, so if it says it's normal, will be normal, and if it has pathology, then you can prioritize those things on the work list. So that's one thing. We can also use deep learning. So deep learning basically helps us. It's a way to mimic the way that humans are doing things. We're teaching via deep learning techniques the machine to mimic humans.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to understand it. again, a practical example, because I think that's
Yeah, I
the
think
best way
that's
to
the best
understand
way,
things.
This helps us
After-
quite a lot.
Yeah. So after we detect those sequences, then you can think about cardiac MRI as not one exam, but perhaps a set of these different exams, right? So there's different sequences, and each one of those sequences require a different type of quote unquote annotation. So a different interaction by the human. So when you're looking at a steady state sequence, it requires a different type of annotation. If you're looking at flow, it requires another one, so on and so forth. So after you do that classification, you can use deep learning techniques to simulate or even sometimes in a superhuman fashion, do all of those contours on the sequences. So once the physician opened those things, everything has been pre-annotated. So that's based on deep learning techniques. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Please,
Where,
no,
where
always.
do you train your algorithm to do that? And how do you train it?
It's a multi-center trial, so typically we have to have data, and I don't want to be now too business-oriented, but for instance, once you're creating their algorithms, you also need to start thinking about regulatory clearances. So for example, when I'm thinking about FDA, the data, more than 50% of those need to come
Come from states.
from the states.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the data needs to be diverse. It needs to cover different regions depending on the clearance that you're aiming for. It obviously needs to cover all the different vendors as well.
That's what I was going to ask next, because it induces some kind of bias where
course,
you're getting your data from will induce some bias.
Even as humans, if you're looking at, you can look at an image and you can tell this is Siemens, this is Philips, right?
Yeah.
So there is some differences, even though there's similar physics behind it, and we're targeting the same organ and we're trying to do the same things. There are differences between them. Okay. So because of that, you need to be able to use data across the different panoplia of, it needs to be heterogeneous, the data, let's say. And that helps you serve every single scenario. So you need massive amount of data. Nowadays, there's clever things you can do in terms of synthetic MRI as well, but I'm diverging a little bit, so you can actually
That's a
simulate.
topic that we want to have in
Yeah,
the
we want to
podcast
have
later on.
We
I
want
would
to
say.
have later on. I think there will be a webinar as well with Davide from the
That would be
Fourier
awesome.
crew, who is gonna mention about
Just
synthetic
about
MRI,
synthetic.
which apparently is quite a good trend at the moment. Everyone is talking about that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to talk. I could talk about that at length, but just as a teaser, access to data is a big thing nowadays. If you have an AI company, so there's ways to, and particularly with synthetic techniques, to simulate that data. So you're actually doubling or allowing for more analytics to be done on the same batch of data, because really access to data is problematic. A lot of the centers are certainly not prepared to make that data available, either commercially or sometimes via research protocols. So there's a lot of companies out there selling data and so on. So it's a big business right now, because there's a lot of AI companies looking for that data and massifying the use of that data.
Actually, sometimes I get some emails saying I have this data set that I would like to sell you for this amount. I'm sure it's a scam,
See?
but that's
Yeah,
the kind of
yeah,
emails that we
So
get.
it's almost going consumer
Wow.
products at this
Yeah,
point.
In the
yeah.
past, they used to sell Bitcoin. Now they sell data.
I'm regretting not buying in 2016.
Data is the new gold.
It is
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that's why I asked that question, because your algorithm is going to be as good as the data that you trained it on.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we mention that as well, because when we're talking about cardiac and you have your own company, and I wanted to understand how you made that decision, because that decision will eventually replicate into the diagnostics that we're doing to our patients and the pathways that we're taking our patients on. So that's where I was going to with that question.
Sure. On the data front, just again to showcase via a very practical example, another company. I'm not on the executive team on this one, but I'm an investor. So they're looking at that gap in the market. So they've developed basically a software platform using, again, deep learning AI techniques and LLM that is able to integrate within the hospitals. And then they're functioning as an intermediary. So the hospital can best create that data, and they can best understand what data they have, particularly for clinical trials and so on. But they're also functioning as an intermediary. What does that mean? So for example, they can function as a way for the hospitals to commercialize that data, so they
Okay.
can get data from the hospitals, and then interfacing with AI companies. There are the end consumers for that data. So that's another company. It's called 𝐂𝐚𝐜 out of France, and they're doing this. They're disrupting the field there because the hospitals are not prepared to do that themselves. So they're allowing for a platform to do this.
We were discussing with another guest exactly about data, meaning the
Yep.
fact that something so complex like the heart, for instance, the
Oh, yeah.
anatomy, you need quite a lot of data, for instance, to replicate like a congenital heart disease or something like that.
Yeah.
And from your perspective, from some of your background, how do you tackle this type of like, we can call it issue, but we can call it like huge variabilities in the market of data?
Yeah. Bigger is better on this case. So obviously the big thing about cardiac MRI, besides obviously leveraging the value on an MRI, which is a tissue characterization, is a moving organ, is a moving target. So let's say if you're looking at just simply doing an LV function, you're looking at doing a whole stack from basis to apical, at least on the systole and the diastole, right? So again, you're doubling the data. If you're doing the annotation across the whole cardiac cycle, suddenly you're looking at, let's imagine that it's 10 to 15 slices across from basal to apical, multiplied by, let's say, 15 phases. Immediately you're looking at 300 and something images that needs to get annotated, right? So that's the difficulty here. So you need to plug in a lot of data. And then, as you said, Julian, that there's a lot of variability as well, anatomical, but also congenital variability. So you need to be able to have data that is representative of that in large amount of data, so big data that is able to feed into deep learning, and you can then start creating the algorithms that can react to those different things. In my experience, you cannot do it all in one bulk in any company, even companies with a lot of resources. In the past, they need to do this in step base, so you can do 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, and then you keep on adding pathologies, and the algorithms keep on improving over time.
We also were talking with the previous guest that we had on another episode about the impact that AI has on our practice. So we were talking about deep learning and computer vision and all of these different algorithms. What is the actual impact on the day-to-day workflow for a cardiac MRI radiographer? Because most of these algorithms and LMMs and all of these things are more used for the report, I believe.
Yeah.
For a radiographer and for a patient, because we often forget the patients as well. What is the main outcome for them?
Yeah. Again, a very practical example. And before that, there's the old adage that AI is not going to replace humans.
Yeah, we just had that chat.
Yeah, we just had a chat about that.
But humans with AI will replace humans without
exactly.
AI.
This is a common theme that we are.
So
So
that's the adage. And in some things, it's visual thinking, because I think in some aspects, AI will really replace
Absolutely. Tasks,
day-to-day tasks that can be done and be automated, and AI is much better than that, and particularly pattern recognitions and things of that nature. So I think in the future, it's not today, but it will certainly be mandatory. You will not be able to have a practice.
That's interesting. This is an
without
interesting
AI.
perspective. We haven't listened so far. So you think will be implemented, will be a tool that will need to be implemented at any cost?
Undoubtedly. I think we're on a transition phase. I look at like the .com bubble.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that.
So everybody is looking into AI because the opportunities are so massive.
Yeah.
I'll go back to your question
No problem.
in the second, Sam. But
don't lose your
train of thought.
Go ahead.
But basically, if you're looking at basically the adoption of AI, comparing with the .com bubble, everybody had a www site. Everybody's looking into the AI and the multitude of things. The hospitals on itself, which are ultimately the end consumer for this, they're not ready to digest. The incentives are not there. Even if you're looking at an efficiency gains, which can be massive, it's typically an additional cost for the hospital. I don't know if this is kind of making sense. So, for instance, the hospitals already have the doctors contracted, you're already there. If I need to buy
more to do the same, right?
So that's the thing. So there's actually just went into in the Senate in the US. In the US is miles away ahead of Europe on this. But they just passed through Senate a legislation that is allowing a fast track for companies to have a specific CPT code. So this is the billing code in the US
For insurance
for
purposes.
AI. For insurance purposes.
Yeah.
So this is for the hospitals to actually get reimbursed for utilizing those IS techniques.
Wow.
Europe is hopefully not far behind it, but there's certainly not a lot of efforts being done there. I think US is leading the track there.
Yeah.
I think also because of they have less regulation on it. We already have the AI Act in
Coming,
Europe.
yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. So it kind of already shapes the landscape, and the companies are trying to figure out what they can do. While in US and in China, it's even more open. They just go with it, right? And then they regulate later on. So I believe that's one of the reasons. I don't know. You have more experience on that.
I can give you an example about this, meaning that I know that was an hospital here in the UK. They were trying to implement like deep learning with a specific manufacturer, but they had to go through an AI committee, the AI committee of the hospital, in order for them to justify AI, how this is going to be implemented. So whichever tool is going to use AI, it needs to go through a committee.
And
before
who's on
getting-
that committee? That's another question.
Yeah,
Right?
so you see, this is the complexity, meaning that according to the healthcare landscape, according to your country, you might face even more barriers in adoption, which not necessarily barriers, but it kind of like slow down a little bit adoption, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I believe with this kind of problem, for example, patients in the United States will be suffering less hurdles to get their diagnostics like from one day to the other than the European patients. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, if you want to get the answers to things, 9 times of the time, just follow the money, right? And if the incentive is there for the hospitals to adopt this, the companies will follow. So if they're being more diligent in that sense, then that's a fair assumption, Sam. But I didn't want to not let your previous question go unanswered. You're asking me for really what's the impact on that, on cardiac MRI specifically. So for example, in our company, we can actually accelerate up to 5 times the normal reading and reporting.
Okay.
So in average, a cardiac MRI reporting can take 60 minutes. And this is even for people highly specialized. There was actually a survey from the SCMR that interviewed their members.
To be done or to be released to the patient? To be done.
Read and report. So
Okay.
the acquisition itself, as you well know, depends obviously on indication, but it can take 45, 60 minutes sometimes. And then the reading and reporting takes another 60.
Okay.
So we are actually, from the techniques that I've referenced before, Julian, because we're automating a lot of that, we're utilizing 0 clicks techniques. We can actually reduce that about 5 times. So we can make that 5 times quicker.
Wow.
So that's a massive efficiency
So
gain.
you act both ways, the scan and the report as well. Did I understand it right?
I can speak about the scanning is not, with this particular company that I referenced, is not the area of focus, even though we're supporting fast scanning protocols.
So mainly the report at the moment.
Reading and reporting. But obviously the main vendors, particularly, for example, Sonic DL by GE, they're introducing deep
would
learning
that be
for that.
like an automated report? In which way you're going to kind of like speed it up, just to understand a little bit more?
So it's 3-phased. So it's on the diagnosis and prioritization. So you can actually know, and it's quite unique to us, you can actually know the certain disease patterns before you go in, so you can prioritize that. And you can even, for instance, basically sort different exams for different experts. So for example, a fellow can do exams that are in principle would be normal, and you can reserve the more complex studies for someone. So that's one aspect.
It's like a triage system as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but based on the AI. And then the other aspect obviously has to do with we're kind of reversing things. Instead of you opening images and doing annotations, you open it, it's already pre-done, and you just need to correct if you don't agree. So that, again, that has massive gains. And the last and third piece of the puzzle has to do with the interoperability with the report. So what's happening today, and it's a very quantitative exam, it's that people are doing the analysis in very specialized tools such as this, and then they're typing the report by hand into the RIS. So we're automatically embedding that into the RIS, utilizing FHIR, like MSR, HL7, and so on and so forth. And the third piece has to do with basically utilizing the time of the experts in the most efficient way by being able to run this out of any browser. You don't need to run to radiology every time you need to do a report to that single only workstation that works this. You can open it from anywhere. You don't need a specific
Do they
hardware.
need any kind of specific hardware to do it? Just normal laptop or Mac?
Normal
or
laptop runs over
something like
anywhere.
that?
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
interesting.
That's awesome. You can report on the bus like our friend said.
Yes, yes.
Because we had
Sam
a
is an
colleague.
innovator about this. He likes to stand up like new
We had
frontiers.
a colleague that was mentioning he would like to be able to scan a patient remotely on a bus. So we can do that on the
We
bus.
can.
That
So
was the best moment of that WhatsApp group, to be honest.
No,
Also, you actually did that?
no.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah, that would be
there was
interesting.
this question of a colleague who say, yeah, but will I be able to scan like a patient if I'm taking the bus, if I'm going back home? I was like, yeah, this is a
You
little bit...
can.
But yeah, again,
Not advisable, but it's a good way of thinking.
Yes,
It's
yes,
The
exactly.
portability of the healthcare provision, I think it's extremely important. And it's something that we more and more active on
Most definitely.
in all areas. And I think AI is going to play a massive role in it. And you were mentioning as well the large language modules. For people listening out there, it's mainly ChatGPT. Gemini is what
That's
people
what people
know.
Yeah.
But I know within the realm of radiology, they have not only different names, but they work differently.
Of course.
Can you explain more or less how they work in terms of helping us radiographers and radiologists with our scans?
Yep. Like again, I can give you a practical example.
Yeah, please.
And again, on the reporting side, you can actually now, and LLMs are brilliant on this. You can actually now take the analytics from the image, and you can automatically, instead of the physician making the move in their head, let's say, the LLMs can actually do that on their behalf.
Okay.
You can actually look at the quantitative values, and you can actually start creating sentences. For instance, if there's an enhancement on the LGE, on the basal slice on the free wall of the ventricle, for example, the system, based on those annotations, based on that quantification, can actually now start creating the
So
sentences.
they
for
use
you.
the annotations that you mentioned before
Yeah,
to build upon it. Okay,
precisely,
that's
to
interesting.
automatically create the sentences. And then you can start creating conclusions, right? So if there's a lesion on that specific coronary, right, you can start making inferences if that's an hibernating myocardium. So that means you can benefit from, for example, a bypass for that particular area of the myocardium.
So
and
it
on.
actually guides treatment as well.
Yeah, so the reports can be smarter in the way that a physician is smart in doing those interpretations. The AI can also
What
do that.
happens when you have one of those reports that are done? They're quite quick, as you're saying, 5 times quicker than the usual.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any supervision from the radiologist on it? And if that is, what happens when they don't actually agree with each other? I mean, the AI algorithm and the radiologist. What is the next step there?
In current legislation, the physician always, and I agree that this should
They're the
always
ones
be the
signing
case.
it anyways.
There's the one signing and there's the one responsible. So the AI is an aiding tool for the physician. Okay, so the ultimate responsible, let's say, is always the reading physician.
Can I ask you something about this? Because what is going to happen if, let's say, I'm a cardiologist and the AI offers this type of solution for this specific patient, meaning in terms of reports, say this patient has this specific pathology, diagnosed, that's it. And I'm a little bit 50-50, but let's say, okay, since AI is based on a lot of training data, want to trust the AI, will I be accountable? Or since it's the algorithm actually that made a mistake, would that be the company who kind of like produce that algorithm that will be accountable in the end?
Yeah, it's not a binary answer. So in certain cases, there's liability associated with companies on that, especially when they provide a binary kind of yes or no type of final report. But in most cases, again, it's the physician, it's the human that still has the final say.
Even if they base the report on the algorithm?
It's an aiding tool, in our case. Obviously, for example, in other cases where, let's say, long nodule detection or so on, there's some liability associated with the companies on themselves. But I think the best, let's say, correlation or real life, for example, comparison is with self-driving cars, right? The technology is out there, but we're still having some difficulties, particularly in terms of regulation of getting
I would have to play the devil advocate there because if you go on a self-driving car without a steering wheel, you have no control over it, right? So the AI should be completely liable for that
Which is
kind
not the case today.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So at this point, if there's an accident with those cars, it's not the person inside the car that's going to be liable for it, right? That's how I would see it.
In your
If
scenario,
you're driving a Tesla,
yeah.
you have a steering wheel that you can control it, then you would be the liable person, even if you have the tool, the AI, to self-drive that car, but you still have control over it.
However, in this scenario, you might not have the right time to react. While a cardiologist might have the possibility to go through the entire text. I'm thinking, might go through the entire text and kind of like cross-check with his own knowledge.
But we're trying to cut time, so we're trying to cut that time they spent reading.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to
That's the
go.
reality. That's in the ideal process. Yeah.
So if they're trying to cut time, we're just spitballing. We just want to understand as well, because I'm learning with you. So if we're trying to cut that time on the reporting side of it, me as a radiologist, should I trust the algorithm and try to speed up my work, or should I review everything that the algorithm has done in order to protect myself against any liable action?
Yeah.
That's the question.
I see where you're going, and absolutely right. So there are things that are certainly more sensitive, and there are things you can automate. And so it's kind of a cybernetic. It's a symbiosis, right? So the algorithm is helping you doing a number of tasks, but you always have to validate. Some things are quite flawless. I don't want to call it flawless, but there's certainly a less probability for error, and other things you still require a lot of human supervision and integration. So certainly in the future, things will become more and more automated. We're constantly moving towards a more aging population, and obviously there's a lot of lack of health professionals.
Yeah, in general.
So we will need to be able to automate this even more. I think we're just at the beginning right now. But
so do you believe that as we mature with AI, the adoption will be higher as well?
Most definitely.
Because we've in a very, it feels like everyone is talking about AI, but we are very in its infancy in terms of adoption. Because when we talk about AI all the time in conventions and all of that, when you actually go to the hospital, there's pretty much nothing there. You might have deep learning, so you scan your images quicker, or you might have an algorithm that helps you report your scan quick. But that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about more automation, not only on the reports, but also on the scanning point of view, as we were talking before. And Anton actually discussed this as well. That we believe that one day we're going to get into the scanner as a patient, and everything is done automatically, and you get a report, and you get out of there already with the report on your hand.
Or the scanner that combines MRI, CT.
I believe
this is your vision, right?
I believe that's.
I agree with both of those visions. It's actually a nice movie that kind of represents that. I saw it in a lecture somewhere. I don't remember the movie, but basically there's a society separated, and there's a part of the society somewhere in the moon, I think, that has access to all the technology. And then there's a guy that has a kid and has to take the kid, and then lies the kid on a scanner, and the scanner just clicks a button and it does the diagnosis and the treatment.
Yeah.
So typically movies are
that's my vision as well. I think I don't think we're going to fuse MR, CT, X-ray. I think we'll have a new type of machine that will do some kind of, not even imaging, because we've been seeing as well that some algorithms take the raw data of the images without even showing us the picture, and we use that raw data to actually report them.
Oh, for sure.
So we don't even need them.
That's a whole kettle of fish.
This is very speculative. So imagine what we're going back.
What I'm saying is real. We already make reports out of raw images without even have the image.
No, exactly. No, I do understand this, but imagine like this hypothetical machine. I want to go back to the machine. Imagine, to account for those congenital heart disease. I mean, how do you kind of like build a machine like this one if not with a lot of data? So I think
data is always the answer.
Yeah.
So you think data will remain the answer even for this type of thing? Yeah. So we have embarked the right path. Now it's just a matter of finding a way.
Yeah, information used to be the most expensive thing in the world. Nowadays, data, which is kind of information, is the most expensive. As you're saying, it's the new gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
People paying millions.
You're definitely onto something. If you're looking, it's a bit wacky, right? So you're taking the information that's on the frequency space, and then you're
Exactly.
applying a Fourier transfer to get it on a way that humans can understand.
But we don't need that
spatially.
anymore because the machine
Exactly.
will read it.
But the machine is so much better. So we're transforming things in a way that our brain can interface with those patterns and can make diagnosis. But there's a lot of information there in the middle that AI is arguably much better. I'm going to use the word arguably.
I agree.
Much better than humans in
Validated.
performing. Yeah. Pathology is a great example of that. So it's moving from 2D to 3D, and it's almost impossible for a human to process all of those amounts of data on a scalable way. But AI is able to do that. And this is current today. So pathology, the same revolution we had in radiology 20 years ago, that digitization of health is now undergoing in pathology. And I think the gains are even higher than what we had in radiology. And that's just an example.
Wow.
So I think my vision will come into fruition.
I'm pretty sure. Stas find someone that can help you to design this machine.
we talked about also before, like a 2-click kind of scan for cardiac, right? You're familiar with that for sure. And you were saying something, and that stuck in my mind, and I want to ask you about. You were saying 0-click kind of reporting, right? It was reporting, right?
Yes.
Can you explain what you mean by that 0-click for the people out there? When we do cardiac 2-click kind of scan, is you literally need to start the sequence and then approve it, and that's 2 clicks and you get all the images they normally get. That's the kind of automation that we're getting into. When you mention 0 clicks, what is that?
Yeah, great question. So again, flip your mind from the acquisition. The scan is already acquired to the 0-click on the reading and reporting means that we're digesting all of that DICOM automatically and using all of those AI techniques
On the background?
I mentioned before. So when I sit down as a doctor, as a physician, looking at the things, everything has already been done for me. If I don't want to touch it and just sign the final report, that's already done.
Okay.
That's what 0 clicks mean.
Got it.
But then obviously you need to go through the images, you need to open it, and you need to validate that makes sense. If you want, you can correct something that you may not agree in terms of contours or annotations that AI has done. So at that point, your interfacing with the system. But from inception, is designed as 0-click.
Very, very honest questions.
Please.
How many cardiologists actually correct
Accept
those?
that, right?
Accept that kind of like pre-filled draft, do we want to call it draft, or final draft? Because as I say, if we want to establish like a 0-click pattern, technically they're supposed not to touch it, no? So how many cardiologists actually modify that initial?
That happens today, if you think about it, Julian, because as someone looking at diagnosis, you're looking at the images and you're already making a movie in your head. So that 0-click already exists in your mind. And then you're going to the motions of creating a report to represent that narrative in your head.
Yeah.
I'm just saying skip that step. And to answer the question directly, in normal cases, that can happen. Why not? Instead of me actually going and drawing circles and adjusting things, that the AI has already done that for me. It's a normal patient. Why am I losing time with normal patients? I should be losing time or investing time
the more
on
complex
more
case.
complex and pathological cases.
I want to touch upon something that it's dear to us as well. So we also created a company. We're kind of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And you created companies and invest in companies and things like that. What goes into developing this kind of software? Where does that idea come? And does it come out of a necessity? Does it come out of, I want to make these patients, radiographers, radiologists' life easier?
Yep.
Or it's just, I like this, I'm going to try to do something with it. Where does that come for you?
Yeah, the vision is certainly from our CMO, so I am our chief medical officer, so I don't want to take them credit for sure. But the idea is really that. So, there's massive gains to be have on the cardiac MRI exam because it takes so long acquiring and analyzing, as we've been discussing, right? So, if there's a lot of gains, then this is where AI can come in. So that was a vision. Creating a system that can simulate what the human can do, doing it on a quicker way, a more efficient way, and particularly a safer way because it also avoids the transcription of results.
Can you explain that safer aspect of it?
Yeah.
Because I think it's really important when we're talking about reporting as well. That word, I think, resonates a lot with our community too. So
great question. So what is happening, and again, I've been on this space for more years than I can count. So I've seen every single type of sites there is, from very small to large tertiary sites. They are super specialized. And the vast majority of them they're doing all of that analysis, sometimes in a very sophisticated way, and then they're taking those results, those quantitative results. We're looking numbers, tables of numbers, and they're transcribing those by hand on a report. So, and these are really intelligent people, but however how intelligent we might be or perfect, nobody's perfect. So there must be clerical errors in doing that, especially if you're doing a lot of numbers, you're getting tired, you're human, you're reporting every day, perhaps maybe you're working at night the previous day.
Just the phone that rings. And
the phone rings, somebody interrupts you.
Someone's telling you there is a backlog of scans.
Show me this exam.
Show me this exam.
And then you don't remember. So these things will happen. So if you don't, that's what I mean by safetyness. Might be more safe.
Sense. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I think I have one more question there for you. Let me just look where it is. So I wanted to know if you could walk me through this process, like a typical AI post-processed report or image. Can you walk me through not only about the development side of it, but as a radiologist, and you already told me the radiologist sits there and it comes up straight away, 0-click kind of thing.
Yep.
How replicable is this process, not only for that radiologist, but for the whole hospital? Let's say you're doing cardiac MRI, right? And you have that way of doing things. But if that radiologist goes to another hospital, to another place, they don't have it. So how easy it is for this person to move from one side to the other and adapt to the algorithm that you have? Because let's be honest, there's so many algorithms out there, and it's really hard to keep pace with it.
Yeah.
So do you train them? Do you not train the radiologists on this, or is just a tool? It's there, they sign it off, they read it. It's for me, it doesn't compute very well.
It's a very good question, but I'll flip it for you, because and what I mean by this. So obviously, as we know, that for cardiac MRI is the gold standard for function analysis, and even if it's the gold standard, if I take very good, well-educated physicians and I compare between them, they do not agree with one another.
We just spoke
that.
about that.
And even if I take the same person,
sometimes disagrees with himself.
With himself.
Yeah, might have different opinions. Yeah.
So the inter-rater agreement is around 90, okay, for the gold standard today. And there is a role on AI in terms of that standardization. So the AI doesn't get tired. They don't care if they had the coffee the previous day or if they didn't sleep. So the results will always be the same if you're using the same algorithm.
So in terms of being replicable and scalable, it is very, very scalable. At that point.
Exactly. And even if you're trying to standardize within the same institution, the same trust, making sure that there is some standardization, the reports are standardized. The role of AI there is quite immense. That's sometimes an underspoken argument around this, because we're always taking the gold standard as the human, but certainly I think the AI can certainly help humans be more
I think it's
standardized.
definitely a symbiotic kind of relationship in the future. How do you see all this morphing in the future in terms of not only the speed and the costs and all of that, but access to healthcare?
Yeah.
So how can all these modules and algorithms and AI in general help me have access to some better healthcare if I'm in middle of the country? Because we understand all of this AI, it's beautiful, it's a future for us and it's a present for some hospitals. But if you don't have the technology there, if you don't have an MRI scanner, right? How can AI also aid those populations? Do you have a vision for it?
Oh, it's part of our vision. So there's three core principles on the vision for that company, and one of them is really the remote reporting and making the most of the physician's time if they're outside, or if there's a particular population that needs access to this particular diagnostic exam. So as you know, on the acquisition side, a number of things are being done in terms of, you mentioned this, the remote scanning, getting scanners on trucks and running across populations.
Saw a Spanish company that created a first portable MR.
Portable, yeah, exactly.
And for extremities, have you seen that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. That's true. So they're doing efforts on that sense, and we're doing efforts on farther down the stream, which is making sure that if a physician has free time and is able to to do the report at that time. They don't need to run to the hospital, to a workstation in the radiology and having their time limited, kind of 9 to 5. If they're from home, they have time, they can report those exams from a population that is farther away. They should, because they're so few and far apart.
Yeah.
A physician to be able to report these kind of exams on top of their specialty, which is already a couple of decades almost, they need to study typically a couple more years to get their certification and so on. So
Plus
we're
the
talking
amount of literature that is produced every
Yeah,
year.
so
We are
this
not
is-
able to cope with such a pace.
Exactly. So it's a highly specialized resource. So as a society, it's senseless if we're not using the best of the time of those highly specialized resources. So that's certainly part of our vision. How can this become remote?
Do you think that this will be eventually part of the education, as you were mentioning, for radiologists and radiographers in the future?
Most definitely. There's
Must be.
exactly. There is
Must
no
be.
Because at this
either
point,
Yeah.
we don't have that at university level, I would say. Some universities might have
Yeah,
it
there are
already.
some modules, but still.
But you
it
get
may- it may-
out and you have to learn with the company that is providing
think-
the algorithm.
I can picture like potential module like literally AI in healthcare, or like as a potential degree, like full degree about AI in healthcare, rather than just like a sectoral module of like a specific course, because this is what you're gonna need one day, and everything will be based on that. This is the feeling I have, at least.
we already see that. Remote acquisition is kind of the big bet for the OEMs, for the original equipment manufacturers. So the whole thing needs to become more flexible and more remote. We don't have sufficient resources.
I wish that was the narrative, because OEMs are selling remote as a cost-saving tool. And that's what I disagree completely. Because
Okay,
I think
expand.
remote is all about flexibility.
Yes.
And flexibility for the radiographers, for the radiologists, for the patients, for everyone. I think it's more about flexibility than anything else. And it's a shame that we're selling it mostly through these OEMs and companies in general. We're selling it as a tool to reduce costs for the hospitals.
Yeah.
And sometimes the costs are not going to be reduced. They
Yeah.
might scan more patients at the same cost they had before. And it's important that we make that distinction, because some hospitals might go, oh, I'm going to save £1,000 a month or £100,000 a month, right? But at the end of the day, they're going to be spending exactly the same. They might have a little bit more of profit margin, which is a different thing that we should be talking about. But yeah, we could be here for hours talking about AI and the philosophy part of it, because I think it's also interesting, the human connection and all of that. I have one more question that we always ask our guests, and
Okay.
I'm actually very interested to know your answer, which is why MRI for you now, and why MRI for you in the future? So it's a double question.
MRI or
MRI
in general?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In general. So MRI, for me, it's such a unique modality because of the tissue characterization capabilities of it. And again, I'm pulling the flames under my own fish. There's expression
pull a
in
sardine to your dish.
put the sardine. Exactly. The coal underneath my sardine. So I'll certainly pick about cardiac MRI in that sense, but it can be applied to MRI.
course,
So that's so unique, and particularly for tissue characterization of the heart, there's so many gains, and as you know, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in the world. So we can look at ischemic disease. We can look at what patients to actually treat or not treat, bypass or not bypass, transplant or not transplant, but also heterogeneous diseases such as amyloidosis or thalassemia and so on. So it's such a unique and powerful technique that I think it deserves more. I think cardiac MRI has still been the reign of a very few chosen individuals that have the capacities to do it, and we need to democratize this technique for the world. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's a great answer. Thank you so much, Daniel. I think it was
My
awesome.
pleasure.
We'll ask you just to leave us a small note of appreciation, if you did appreciate being here or not. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
and
much
we
again.
hope to see you
It was
again.
amazing. Thank you.
Totally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.